so somebody do your hair. Ruby glass program, right?
Yes, Ruby.
All makers, all models. Okay. We're going this way. We're gonna pretend like we're in it. Okay. Ruby glass program. For the Pikes Peak Person Glass Club.
We're going to do the down and dirty.
Okay, quick.
Okay. So Ruby glass has been around pretty much since the beginning of glass making. Your first makers back right around 1000 AD, they got into it because they were being alchemists and they figured out that gold can go into glass. Ooh, it turns red. And some of them also used copper, which is the lower cost alternative. And that's what you see in a lot of the middle-aged church windows, things like that. About 1760-ish, one fellow in the Bohemia region rediscovered how to do the gold ruby and got a really good fix on it. So that's where gold ruby really took off again. Late 1700s, you're going to see a lot of Bohemian ruby glass. A lot of it's in the museums in Europe. There's a couple pieces in the Corning Museum in the US. And then one of his apprentices kind of leaked the formula to another guy in southern Germany. So around 1780, you get some more German influence in there. Throughout the 1800s, ruby glass just kind of trickled in. Very expensive to make, so you didn't see a ton of it. The southern Germans did more with the copper formulas, and you see a lot more of the brown reds and the purple reds. Starting in the late probably 1870, 1880s, you're going to get into these. This is also what we call Bohemian today. This is Egerman. It's a copper-based red, the red flashing cut to clear. And you tend to have these heraldic type designs, castles and stags and shields cut into it. It's a very thin glass compared to what we see today.
I would have guessed that was a lighthouse, but it is a castle.
It's a castle.
Okay.
Just as a side note, Payton City did do some for them in the when they couldn't do the imports during World War II. Much later, you will see some done by Payton City out of West Virginia. Okay, also in the late 1800s, American ruby stained glass, and this is stained. This is not a flash layer of glass over it. So this is another effect, but not true ruby.
Is there a way to tell the difference quickly between the flash and the glass color, other than just knowing which is which?
A lot of it's knowing which is which. This is a lot thinner, and you're going to see little scrapes in it more often. You really have to get a good ding into a flash.
Yeah.
Before you're going to get a mar in the colored layer. Also 1880s, 1890s, this is beaded drape. I believe Consolidated originally did this. It was also redone by Wright and Fenton, among other companies, blew it for them. This is what they called pigeon blood red in the 1800s. It is one of the gold ruby varieties. This one doesn't show up very well, but you will sometimes get amberina effect. The amberina is caused, you'll hear half struck. The ruby glass is heat sensitive, and it does have to be, I believe it's reheated after it is taken out. And depending on how you reheat it, depends on how true your ruby color is. Sometimes you'll get it shaded down to yellow. Sometimes the whole piece will end up orange. I do have a piece of McKee rock crystal that's all orange, and I forgot to bring it. I was going to bring that as an example. You also, as you go into the 20th century, you're going to see a lot of iridescent effects. This piece is Diamond's Ruby Luster, and this has a gold interior and the ruby exterior. They also did a Royal Luster with blue glass. Back to Europe. This is done probably in the teens or 20s. This is a really heavy crackled and iridescent effect.
Can you hold that up a little bit further to the light? I can see that.
Can you see the ruby through it?
You can really see the ruby through it, yeah.
It has a really heavy iridescence, so unless you hold it to the light, you're not going to be able to tell it's ruby. Lotz did this style, Kralik, Rinskopf. I don't know which maker this is for sure. I haven't done enough research.
But the base layer is ruby, right?
The base layer is ruby.
And then is that...
Under that crackle is a ruby vase, which you can see it in the light. That vase is ruby, but it's just crackles. Heavy crackles. Wow.
Yep, this is all ruby in the bottom. Okay, and this is more dark ruby. This, I believe, is also made by Diamond. Ruby glass with a stretch interior. It's got the onion skin effect. And I don't know if we're going to be able to catch that on camera.
Yeah, you can see the iridescence,
Yep.
but you can't see the
Iridescence, and
crackle
there's-
as much.
Really kind of crackly right through here. It's much more subtle than the other. It's
Oh, there it is. Yep.
typical of what we call stretch glass. There is also Red Carnival. Fenton, among other makers, made that, and I do not have a piece here tonight. It's a little above my pay grade. Going into the 1930s, you start getting into a lot of the pressed patterns. This is Fenton's version of Georgian. They also called it Agua Caliente. Their Georgian turned out a nice deep red on this one. You will see it in the Amberina effect as well. But most of their Georgian pieces have a lot of curve to them. If you see the sexy Georgian pieces with some figure, it's probably Fenton. If it's straight up and down, there's several other makers. Paden City, New Martinsville did some, Cambridge did some, Beaumont did some. But since I'm a Fentonaholic, we'll keep going with Fenton here. This is one where you can really see the Amberina. This is closer to the half struck we were talking about before. It's almost yellow right in the center. And then it goes out to the true ruby on the edge. This particular version of basket weave is a little harder to find. It's got the 3 open layers or open rows.
I'm going to stand in front of you, sorry.
Another Fenton bowl. This one's harder to find in this size. You see this in a smaller, about an 8-inch size usually. This larger size I happened to come across this summer, and I passed on, not realizing how unusual it was. And John Locke bought it for me for Christmas because I told him what mall it was in, and he didn't get me back there. So he came to Colorado for Christmas. So this is all 1930s era. Moving into the 40s, most of your elegant glass makers did make different forms of ruby. You'll see gold ruby. Some others, I believe Cambridge did theirs with selenium. There's some that also have cadmium in them. So you're getting more variations in your ruby tone. And I didn't bring it in after all. Hawking's Royal Ruby, and we've got a piece over there, is back to the copper formulas we were talking about earlier. It's much less expensive to make, and that's why you see all that Hawking machine-made glass done with the copper formula. So this is Westmoreland's English hobnail, and the double-handled, I call it the trophy bowl.
So not all of it was made with gold. That's just different other chemicals as well that created this color.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is the Imperial Lace Edge. This is another really nice, deep, deep ruby. This is that same mold a lot of times you'll see in what they call Katy blue, and the blue opalescent. This next is going to show you a little bit more variation. This is the Imperial Cape Cod Baked Apple set. So you've got the little shallow bowl and the underplate. And on this one you can really see the underplate is quite a bit lighter, oranger than the ruby bowl.
It really shows up on camera as orange. Is it any thinner than the bowl, or is it just a different formula glass?
Slightly. They probably just didn't reheat it as much. It's the same formula glass, but that's where you get a lot of variation in the ruby. Morgantown did it in what they call Spanish red. Once again, a really deep red. They also have a red orange they did called Gypsy Fire. But that is much more orange than this.
I mean, this one's almost black.
This one, I don't know the maker on it. It is a super, super deep red.
Yeah. If it doesn't have light through it, you can barely see
Yeah.
the red in it.
It's very dark. This one does have the applied silver trim.
It's beautiful.
Used to be in one of my windowsills.
I was gonna say, did you polish that just to bring in here tonight?
No, I did not. New Martinsville Moondrops, the individual sugar and creamer. These come in several sizes. These are the most affordable ones, therefore the ones I have.
I think I have those too.
And then you're going to start seeing here a lot of patterns that you're familiar with in all of the different colors. Fostoria coin. This is the large open bowl. Fostoria generally had a nice deep red. As you get into these later Fenton ones, and I don't think I've got a good example, Fenton's ruby tended to be more amberina in shading once you get past the 50s. This one is Fostoria's Crown Compote, the large one. This is the Navarre Crown. They did a whole line of crowns. So you've got, let's see, Windsor, Habsburg, Navarre.
I think there's 4 or 5, right?
There's at least 4.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was 4. Mom's got a few.
One
It helps that your last name is King and
Yep.
you collect a crown pattern. So
2 more Fostoria patterns. Heirloom, this is the small handkerchief bowl. And Jamestown, which you can get an entire dinner set of.
Does the dinner set come in multiple colors or?
It does. I would guess probably 8 or 9.
she asked me like I should know these things.
Becky should know these things. I
I don't
try to
know.
get her trained. And
It's only so many hours in the day.
right? Okay, starting right in this section, LG Wright was a company that contracted with a lot of different glass companies to produce glass in the molds that Cy Wright owned. So we're getting into those right now. The first pattern I've got here is the Sweetheart. This is off the old Duke and Victor molds. It's little heart shapes. I'm surprised Becky doesn't have any of this.
I don't.
It does
I
come
agree
in,
with
It
you.
does come in turquoise blue too.
Well, so are those the old molds like the old EPAG glass then?
Yep,
And mostly
EAPG.
EAPG?
Yep.
What did
Or
I
Carnival.
say? Oh, well.
You said
most-
EPAG instead of EAP.
All right. Most of it was done in clear then previously.
Yes.
Okay.
So you, as a general rule, you're not going to see any old glass and ruby because of the cost.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite patterns. I do have most pieces in it. This is Eyewinker. This is probably a good place to show the difference where he had different makers make it. So this piece is probably Fenton produced. It's got a lot of amberina right at the base of this picture.
Yeah, you can see it right on the rim.
Yep.
So he basically shopped around what he wanted to have poured, and
Exactly.
whoever was pouring it and gave him the cheapest contract at the
Bingo.
time, that's who he went with.
Exactly. And then this one is pretty much solid ruby all the way down to the base. This is the large compote in Eyewinker.
So
And
then,
that's probably Fostoria, maybe Viking. Mosser was starting around right by then.
and that's why it's harder to pinpoint the age of the Ellie Smith stuff because
LG Wright.
Ellie
Wrong
Smith,
one.
LG Wright, because they had it made by so many different companies.
As a matter of fact, Ellie Smith did a little bit of production for LG Wright.
And then usually it's depending on which glass they were pouring helps you pinpoint like where it
You can
was
narrow down things like
narrowed down to.
nobody else could do the opalescent blown wares for LG Wright. So anytime you see like the old daisy and fern, the honeycomb, your dot optics, things like that in LG Wright, Fenton did those. You know that for sure because no other companies in the US were capable of producing it. That's an easy one. All the pressed wares, it gets pretty.
It goes all
Pretty
over the
wild.
place,
Yep.
especially this one.
Yep. We're talking a little bit on Moon and Star. It's really hard to tell the difference between Wright Moon and Star and Smith Moon and Star. Some of their molds are pretty much exact copies, like the large covered compote. I believe this one is Smith. I haven't pulled out my books recently. But if I remember right, this is the Smith mold that's got a little bit more rounded edge to it. Now, if there was a serious Moon and Star collector around here, like Roberta, who's not here tonight, she would probably say, yes, it is, or no, it's not. Another fun one, and Becky's got the goblet in stock in this right now. This is the double wedding ring pattern. This is another one of Wright's patterns.
Now I do know with the Moon and Stars that the company, one of the creators of that pattern, went back and were buying at one of the conventions. They were speaking. They've gone and bought back or consolidated all the molds back to themselves because they were all over the place with different glass companies. And as glass companies closed, they were getting lost or consolidated or shipped off or sold off.
So it's not.
So they're now.
Not the creators of the company.
Who is it though?
It's
W is his last name.
Weisher.
There we go.
It was Adams. Adams Island Molded Machine.
Mm-hmm.
Adams was the original producer of Moon and Star, what they called Palace in the 1800s.
There you go.
And then when Wright did molds and Smith did molds. Gosh, there's a couple other companies that did them. Those are the ones that are all getting returned now.
Yeah, and now he's got the majority of everything that is still able to be produced mold-wise back in their possession.
Yes.
So, and I think they're casting their own glass with
Yes.
them now
Mhm.
under their
Yep.
label.
I don't know if they're actually pressing or if Monster's pressing for them.
I don't know, but I know it's all coming out under his name.
Yes.
Yeah,
Correctamundo.
because I found some of the little children's sets and they're adorable in the Moon and Stars. Beautiful colors.
But we digress.
Everything you ever wanted to know about everything, all in one
Yes.
presentation.
Just for Ruby. So, this is Viking's later issue of Georgia. New Martinsville ended up becoming Viking, so that's what the old molds, you're going to see old ones are New Martinsville, newer is going to be Viking. This is the Viking sugar. I use it as my everyday glassware and I didn't think to pack up any. But I had this one in the box, so we get to look at that.
Is this an eye winker as well?
This is an eye winker. These two pieces of eye winker are ones that Monster is producing today.
Oh, that's right.
So Monster is our last company that's currently producing in the U.S. They're out of Cambridge, Ohio. And I meant to bring the one that was done for Wright. Monster has marked in the center with their mark. It's a little M in there. It's an M in the state of Ohio. Am I right side up?
It's just really hard to see. I mean, you can see that there's something there, but you really can't see it.
Monster's marked. That's the only way you can tell. Because otherwise the glass quality is just as good.
Well, and they're producing lots of vintage colors too right now, like the jadeite and things like that they produced back. That was uber collectible. They're reproducing their very popular colors, which is very smart.
And one thing they have done, they bought a lot of Fenton molds. They do have an agreement not to produce those Fenton molds in any color that Fenton did. So like right now you're getting the hobnail molds in jadeite and their purple opaque, which they're calling eggplant.
Which are some weird, they look really strange in
They're
those
cool,
colors.
though.
They're cool,
Yeah.
but they're like, that doesn't look right. Because it's not.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but that's what it is. They're producing using the Fostoria American punch bowl bases as bases, and they're coming out in all sorts of bright, cool colors. I can't think what else they've got.
Well, the cake plates are doing cake stands in all the
but
different
those-
colors.
Yeah,
I saw the Santa in the jadeite, and that was like,
Yeah.
and the trees, the
they
Fenton
did
trees.
They did the Fenton trees, and they've done their trees as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the last piece. This is also Monster. This is their embossed thistle pattern. This is the one that was originally a Cambridge pattern. I believe they have expanded the number of shapes that's available in.
And so you're saying, if I pull this one, this is what you're saying.
Yep, that one and the one behind it. These are the Anchor Hawking. Thank you.
These
Royal
are
Ruby. This is with the copper formula.
That, the red one, the glass was mine when I was a child. My drinking glass.
Neat.
And my sister had a different one, I can't remember hers. I knew mine.
That's the important thing. Nobody else's bugs in there.
So this is they're both a copper formula?
Mhm.
All right.
This one's just thinner than that one, so it's not.
That one I don't know much about, I liked it. And
Same company with
I
the
got a couple
decoration on it.
so-
Yep.
Mhm.
All right.
And then if you pass me that Fenton fan base, we'll show some contemporary.
It's really hard to
Fenton
reach
Ruby.
one direction.
Woohoo!
You might be in it, just saying. Do I have all your consents? Kim.
She's like, no. So this is modern Fenton production with the Mary Gregory. I know somebody that's an avid collector of this. Once again, you got more Amberina on your Fenton.
I'm going to just go to this way to see it better.
There we go. Little boy fishing. So that's one of the later production
Tip it again.
pieces.
Yeah, you can really see that ring around the bottom. So,
And I think that pretty much sums up our big Ruby show.
all right.
Woohoo!
Okay, so somebody do your hair. Ruby Glass program, right?
Yes, Ruby.
All makers, all models.